Good morning, Mayor Carter. Can you hear me?
Good morning. Yes, I can. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning and welcome to the October 5th, 2020 corporate service meeting. In order to ensure adequate physical distancing, all members of council and staff will be participating remotely. For those viewing the web stream today, I can confirm that only I, the Vice Chair, and City Clerk support staff are in the chamber. The Clerk has muted all microphones. In order to speak, please advise the Council Committee Coordinator via the WebEx chat function, and I will recognize you by name and you may unmute your microphone. As a reminder, although WebEx has a raise hand feature, we will not be using it in this meeting. If you have a motion, it must be submitted in writing and sent to the Council Committee Coordinator Jennifer Lane and Hannah Lesnoff to their respective email addresses in order for it to be displayed in our meeting. Please do not type in the chat function as it cannot be displayed from there. In keeping with the practice established by Council, unless a recorded vote is requested, I will ask if any member is in opposition to the motion before us at the time. If you are in opposition to the motion, please unmute your microphone and state your name and that you are opposed. I ask everyone for their patience as we continue to work through this technology. The members of the Committee for Corporate Services Department are myself, the Chair, Bradley Marks, the Vice Chair, Councillor Jane Hurst, Councillor Derek Giverson, Councillor John Neal, Councillor Brian Nicholson, and His Worship the Mayor Dan Carter. I will now look to Jennifer Lane, who is the Council Committee Coordinator, to confirm that all councillors are in attendance. All committee members are in attendance today. Madam Clerk?
All committee members of the Corporate Services Committee are in attendance.
Thank you very much. I would now ask the Commissioner of the Corporate Services Department, Tracy Adams, to introduce the online staff in attendance for our meeting. Good morning, Madam Commissioner.
Good morning. Thank you very much. So we have a full house today. We have Sam Yoon, our City Solicitor, Brenda Jeffs, our Director of Municipal Law, Enforcement and Licensing, Mary Medeiros, our City Clerk, Laura Davis, our Deputy Clerk, Ken Mann, our Manager of Policy and Research, Kevin Fagan, our Manager of Municipal Law Enforcement, Matthew Binkle, our lawyer, Dave Mobby, our Director of Information Technology Services, Steve Patterson, our Manager of System and Security Operations, and Kevin Alexander, our Director of Municipal Facilities and Management Services. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Commissioner. Madam Clerk, moving on with the agenda. Additional agenda items, there are none. Are there any declarations of interest that can be declared by members of the committee at this time? Hearing none, thank you very much. We now move on to presentations and delegations, of which there are none, and we move to correspondence requiring action. I have Corp 2032, Public Wi-Fi at Henry House Museum and Lakeview Park, and before I go to Councillor Nicholson, who has a motion, I would just like to acknowledge the visiting councillors who are in attendance today. Councillor Mayor Petrie, Councillor Kerr, and Madam Clerk, I wonder if you could assist me with all the other visiting members of the council to this committee meeting.
We have Councillor Tito Dante, Mayor Petrie.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Nicholson, good morning.
And Councillor McConkey's here too, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Thank you very much. Councillor McConkey is in attendance this morning.
I believe Councillor Kerr is there as well.
I believe I mentioned Councillor Kerr.
Sorry, my apologies, I didn't hear you.
Councillor Marion Petrie, good morning.
Councillor Nicholson, 2032, please.
Yes, I believe staff have a written form.
If I could just give us one moment to put up the motion and then you may speak to it. Okay, I believe the motion is up. Councillor Nicholson, when you're prepared.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did send it to all members of the committee and council previously. It's not been offloaded since that email. The main part is, therefore, be it resolved that the city staff continue to work with the utility companies, Oshawa Power, Bell, Rogers, determine that public Wi-Fi can be supplied as part of the Oshawa Community Museum Expansion Project, and 2, that the Oshawa Historical Society be thanked for their correspondence.
Any other members of the committee wish to comment on Councillor Nicholson's motion? Hearing none, are there any opposed to Councillor Nicholson's motion?
Sorry, this is Councillor Giberson. I just was having trouble bringing up the unmute and the chat function.
Go ahead, Councillor Giberson.
Thank you. I'm just wondering from staff whether we have had a direct conversation with OPUC, as I am aware that they are providing or working to provide some internet infrastructure in, in that part of the city, I believe, working with HOPA to try and help assist them. Have we had a conversation with OPUC?
I'm sorry, Councillor Giberson, perhaps you could re-ask your question. We're having difficulty hearing you here in the chamber. Or if staff got that, maybe they can answer Councillor Giberson's question.
Through you, Chair Marks, this is Commissioner Adams. Yes, we have had discussions with Oshawa PUC.
Okay, would the, thank you for the answer through you, Chair Marks. And I guess I'm wondering if the conversation could be directed directly to their CEO. My brief discussion with him on this matter was that he would like to see what they can do, and I'm wondering if there can be a direct conversation with him on this item if this motion passes today.
Commissioner Adams.
Through Chair Marks to Councillor Giberson, absolutely, we can continue those conversations.
Thank you. That's all I wanted to ask. Thank you, Chair Marks.
Thank you very much. Councillor McConkey, good morning.
Morning, Chair Marks. I would like to ask staff a couple of questions on this matter. If, first of all, the HOPA people have been contacted to amplify the Wi-Fi down at the lake. They must need to have Wi-Fi there. I wonder what they're using. Has anybody reached out to them to find out?
Through Chair Marks to Councillor McConkey, at this point in time, I have not had any conversations with HOPA on Wi-Fi.
Okay, I would like to see if we can collaborate with them. I understand and appreciate the motion that Councillor Nicholson has made. I originally made this motion, notice a motion at Council to have Wi-Fi around Henry House and the museum, simply because I had a request from a resident who's down there regularly and would appreciate being able to get online. But I know there's a lot more than that one. And in fact, there's so much now that we've learned since COVID that we all want to be connected. So I understand that Councillor Nicholson has tied this in with a legacy project at the museum. But if I could ask through you, Chair Marks, to Commissioner Adams, does this mean that it cannot happen well before any approval of an expansion of the Oshawa Community Museum? Because the way it's reading to me, it would have to go hand in glove. And I think that, in fact, it should happen as soon as possible. And I can't believe that we're behind on getting it down there. So if that could be answered, I appreciate that.
Through Chair Marks to Councillor McConkey, the way that this is written is that it would go hand in glove.
So I would really hope that the committee would separate that, because I don't see why we should put off another year not having Wi-Fi down at the lake. I mean, there's enough people down there. We've spent enough money. The city has spent well over $1 million on the, and I'm sure it's going to be beautiful, the new park, and the petrol tanks are down, and Hope has been very engaged with us about making this very wonderful down at their part of the harbor as well. So I just think that we've got to put out all the feelers and really commit a little bit stronger than the wording of this, and to make sure that it doesn't have to be tied in with the legacy project, because we have not got any priority budget items at this point. But when this goes, I think it should be on the 2021 budget. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor McConkey. I now have Councillor Nicholson on my list. Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I hadn't realized we were going to get into a big debate on this, because I thought this was going to advance the project along. I wonder if staff can give us a general ballpark cost of what it would take to go alone on this without other partners such as OPA, Bell, Rogers, etc.
Through Chair Marks to Councillor Nicholson. So if the intent is to have public Wi-Fi down so that the Oshawa Community Museum as well as Lakeview Park would have free public Wi-Fi, the capital cost just approximately would be about well over $200,000, probably around $250,000, and then we would also have an annual operating cost of approximately $23,000.
Thank you. Just my colleagues, I support the project. I think it makes good sense to try to develop a Wi-Fi system for Lakeview Park. It's in my constituency, my work constituency. I think it's an appropriate step forward. I was trying to support Councillor McConkey's original motion to try to move this further along. But I think for us to do it alone and simply to arbitrarily spend that kind of cost, when there is the strong personal possibility of working in partnership with HOPA. I attended their land use meeting, and it was discussed at that meeting where they were looking at potentially putting structures on the West Wharf as one of their options for consideration. Obviously, those structures would require Wi-Fi, and then maybe some costs to be shared there. Additionally, Bell is running its 5 program along Lakeview Park Avenue at this time, as well as coming south on Central Street. It hasn't reached Lakeview Park yet, but again, we don't know what the long-term goals are for that particular scheduling. I just believe we need more information from the potential partners and utility companies before we make a final financial decision. Beyond that, we also approved the construction of a new tower on the lands just north of the HOPA lands that we control. So I think there's a number of factors, a number of balls in the air right now that may benefit the city. And I just can't, even though it's in my own constituency, I can't justify spending $250,000 unilaterally in the 2021 budget when there is a potential for having other partners or even other organizations produce the same results but at their cost. So I hope we support the motion, give our staff a direction, go back and look at all options to look at what partnerships are out there, and then they can bring a report back and we can make an informed decision with some real costs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other comments to the motion? Hearing none. Are there any opposed to the motion? Madam Clerk, that carries. Thank you very much. Moving on, referrals from Council and Standing Committee. I have Corp 2033, amendments to the Ontario Traffic Act compliance with noisy vehicle bylaws. Members of the committee, it would be my preference that we refer this to Corp 2026. Councillor Neal, I know that you had raised concern this morning about speaking to this, but would you be amenable to referring this to the report?
Move it.
Thank you very much. This is a referral motion, direction and timing only. Any opposed? Hearing none, thank you very much. Moving on with the agenda. We now have Corp 2031, additional information related to Report 2020, voting options for 2022 municipal and school board elections. Mayor Carter.
Move the Corp 2031 to refer to Corp 2020.
Mayor Carter, sorry, can you clarify your intention, sir?
So I want to make sure this additional information is referred to 2020, but I do have a motion in regards to 2020 corp.
Okay, one moment, please.
Thanks.
It's all one, Mr. Mayor Carter, so I'd be prepared to entertain your second intention here.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be able to chat this morning. I've submitted a motion, and I'm hoping the clerk has that information available. Moved by myself that the Corporate Service Committee reconsider its decision of September 14th, 2020 with respect to option 2, the internet and telephone voting. This would take a reconsideration, which would be 2/3. And as you can see on the screen, sir, the following motion would be brought forward. So step one, I guess, is to see if we can get a reconsideration on this item from members of committee.
Thank you very much, Mayor Carter, and members of the committee. You'll know.
Vote 2, please.
Yes, please. Yes, recorded vote called for. You'll see members of the. I'm sorry, Councillor Nicholson.
A motion of clarification, just so I can understand what we're doing.
If you look at number 6, page 7 of the report, you can see that the clerk has outlined the procedural steps that have to be taken if council wants to reconsider any of its options. Mayor Carter has brought a motion forward to reconsider option 2, which failed at the last meeting. He has now asked that committee entertain a reconsideration vote, of which I'm prepared to call with a recorded vote.
So if I understand it correctly, then, Mr. Chairman, if I wish to oppose internet and electronic voting only, I would vote against the reconsideration. If I was willing to consider it, I would vote yes.
You would, or you can articulate your points if and when this reconsideration carries. But I'm not prepared to just accept
or
any.
doesn't carry.
I'm sorry?
Or doesn't carry. We're not assuming it's going to carry. Right?
That's right, or it does not carry, of course.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, when you're ready with a recorded vote on the reconsideration. Thank you.
On the reconsideration, Mayor Carter,
Yes.
Councillor Giberson,
Yes.
Councillor Hurst,
Yes.
Councillor Neal,
No.
Councillor Nicholson,
No.
Councillor Marks.
Yes. That carries. Members of the committee. Mayor Carter, we now have option 2 on the floor. Would you care to speak to that, sir?
Thank you very much. The motion is in front of you, of course. The council endorsed the internet and telephone voting for the 2022 municipal election as set out in Report Corp 2020, dated September 9th, 2020, and the council passed a bylaw as outlined in attachment 3, authorizing the use of internet and telephone voting technologies for the 2022 municipal election. I'll refer, Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, to page 2. Item 2 that really talks about the internet and telephone voting aspect of it and really using technology that everyone is familiar with, which is a telephone, a landline or a cell phone, but a telephone that everybody is very, very familiar with. As a matter of fact, the telephone's been with us for many, many years. But also the extraordinary steps in regards to the ease of this process, even for those that would find it a different way of being able to vote. It really does lay out the proper procedure in regards to being able to address the issues. I mean, this gives the opportunity for people to vote from home. It has good security measures that are in place. There is an ease in regards to the steps being able to take for individuals to be able to do so. It also gives steps in regards to those in our long-term care facilities or our seniors facilities. It gives us an opportunity to work with the public, and especially in days of COVID-19. And I'm sorry, but I am truly an optimist, but I do believe that we may be in a precarious situation for a long period of time. And I think that we need to have clear direction and what direction we're going. I also think that we need to also look at modernization. You've heard me say this in my State of the Union address about innovation, modernization, and diversification. And I truly believe that this is a step in the right direction when it comes to that, with the sensitivity of those that have had to cast a ballot in the past. We continue to be able to find ways of being able to engage people to be able to cast a ballot. In some circumstances, it can be because of the reason that, maybe mobility issues. But this is a great way of being able to use familiar technology on both sides of the coin to be able to make sure that we address the modernization of engaging people to cast a ballot on the municipal election. And I think that we have enough time to be able to educate, inform, to be able to make sure that we see all of the opportunities of making sure that we clearly understand that the technology works well, that we can go through all the processes. I think the report speaks very clearly in regards to other municipalities that have undertaken this. I think that a lot of municipalities are looking at how do we modernize our voting process so that more people will be engaged and be able to do it under a secure umbrella, and make sure that it is a familiar technology that others are able to use at the same time. I also believe, Mr. Chair, that this is only one step of many steps that are needed in regards to engaging our population in regards to casting a ballot. As many of us saw in the previous election, we had one of the lowest turnouts in regards to eligible voters casting a ballot. Now, that's not just making ease of how people can be able to cast a ballot, but that's the engagement of all members of council and the mayor in regards to how they're engaging people in a forum that not only gives an opportunity to speak to, but also receive from. And I think that I'd encourage everybody to continue to remember that this is only one step in regards to hopefully getting more people engaged in regards to casting a ballot. But it also means that it also puts a great deal of dependence on each member of council and myself to be able to make sure that we're doing the colleges and universities, that we're meeting with the seniors group, that we're having town hall meetings, that we're doing coffee chats with neighbors on streets, that we continue to talk and hear the concerns of the community. Make sure that we use our social media platforms to engage people so that their ideas and concepts, concerns are coming to us, and make sure that we do that. I know that members of council do a tremendous job in regards to when a call comes in, responding to it, getting staff to get engaged in it, making sure that they call the constituent back. And I know that that plays a significant role when we have those opportunities. So this is only one step of many steps. If we want to see the engagement process of our voting process moving forward, at the appropriate time, sir, I'd ask for a recorded vote. But I do want to compliment our clerk for putting, and our commissioner for making sure that there's a good report here and take many things under consideration. And I'm asking committee support in regards to the next steps. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, and the recorded vote request is noted by our clerk. I have Councillor Giverson, followed by Councillor Nicholson and Councillor Kerr. Councillor Giverson.
Thank you, and good morning again, Chair Marks and members of committee and staff. I'm going to be supporting the motion today. I have sent an amendment to clerks, and I'm hoping that they can put that up at the time that they...
I'm sorry, Councillor Giverson, did you say that you sent an amendment to clerks?
I did, yes.
Just give us one moment, please, Madam Clerk.
I just don't know if it's arrived yet, so I'll give them a moment here.
Okay, well, the clerk put the amendment up. You're moving the amendment now, Councillor Giverson?
Yes. It's identical to the amendment that I moved at the last committee meeting. Or, I don't know if the wording is the exact same, but the purpose is the same.
Just committee's indulgence while we have this amendment put up. Okay, Councillor Giverson, do you care to read your amendment first for the committee and then speak to that, please?
Sure, I can. So the amendment is that the budget be increased to $900,000 with the additional amount being used for increased public communications and education on the change and additional in-person options. to speak briefly to that, probably just repeating what I said last time when I introduced this amendment for consideration committee. We know how much it would cost to maintain the status quo. That number is benchmarked in the options that are put in front of us in the original report. So knowing what that cost would be at that benchmarked amount, status quo, I'd like the committee to consider using that benchmark to further resource the option that's being looked at here, whether or not it passes. But in the were to pass, I think that the committee and ultimately council would really want to consider the benefit of using the existing benchmarked amount to just pump some more resources into communicating with the public, making sure everyone's clear on changes, and also potentially just add a few resources for the in-person voting options, because those are a part of the solution that is in front of us. So I'm going to leave that one for now, and then once we've voted on this amendment, I would still like to be able to support it.
Thank you very much. Councillor Nicholson, I have you on the list, most likely to speak to the main motion, but do you have any comments on the amendment? And I can circle back after this amendment is voted on.
Mr. Chairman, my only comments are more to the standard motion. Only comment I make on the $900,000 is I think is woefully inadequate, and you're going to find that your costs, if you endorse this, are going to go up exponentially. Therefore, I will not be supporting the amendment.
Okay, thank you for your comments on the amendment. Councillor Kerr, to the amendment. Councillor Kerr, are you there? I'm going to maybe move to another speaker and then come back to Councillor Kerr until we get this sorted out. Councillor Hurst.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When I asked to speak, I was speaking to the main motion, but now we have the amendment. So for clarification, do I speak to the amendment, or can I
Please speak to the amendment. I'll circle back and when this amendment's voted on.
Okay. Okay, so at this point in time, with respect to the amendment, I appreciate Councillor Guyberson's concern about it, but I would think as part of all of the public attention that's given to municipal elections in the normal course, in that the city does, as part of its communication package, it already states about the protocols, etc., for voting, any questions people may have with respect to voting in the municipal election, that I think this extra sum of money wouldn't be necessary. So that being said, I won't be supporting the amendment brought forth by Councillor Guyberson, but I do appreciate his concern about communication. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Kerr, we'll try you again, and then we'll go to Councillor McConkey. Councillor Kerr, to the amendment. Councillor Kerr, are you there?
Hello. Hello.
Yes, sir. To the amendment. Councillor Guyberson's amendment, please.
You can hear me now?
I can hear you. Yes, sir.
Oh, finally. I unmuted last time. Anyway, so be that as it may, thanks, and I'm glad I can get through. I would like to direct one question to staff before I make a comment, please.
Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Just to staff, part of the pushback that I've heard from the community is their fear of or lack of access to what they think would be computerized voting. Either they don't have access or are unfamiliar with the computer process, and yet we're saying that the voting can be done by phone. So my question is, and it may be very rudimentary, can this voting be accomplished by using the typical landline that virtually all citizens have access to?
Through the chair to Councillor Kerr, yes.
So if that's the case, and if citizens have used the phone for other forms of accessing information, you know, if you'd like to speak to Bob Smith, press 3. You'd like to speak to Jennifer Dowdy, press 4. If they can do that, is there any reasonable barrier to the average citizen with access to a landline? Is there any barrier to them successfully voting in the proposed by-phone election process?
Through Chair Marks to Councillor Kerr, there are no barriers, and as the report plus the supplemental information indicates, there will be voting centers as well for individuals that are uncomfortable with technology, that they're able to go to the voting center and cast their ballot using the internet devices on site.
Thank you. So if I may, Chair Marks, I guess my comments to the amendment are these. The biggest issue I've been hearing for the last 2 elections is that the voter turnout has been, in some people's eyes, painfully low. I think Mayor Carter may have alluded to this earlier. And, you know, there are people for whom accessibility is an issue, particularly if it's a rainy day. Maybe people don't feel like going out and voting or making the effort, or it's difficult for them on slippery sidewalks, or whatever those issues are that people perceive to be a preventative way for them to actually cast their vote. Surely, then, 2 things. Surely they can pick up a landline, if they have one, as most residences do, and dial in and follow the procedures and cast their vote from home. And surely that would eradicate many of the barriers that different types of people say they have getting to the voting booth. And we do want to be representative of as many citizens as possible. That's the first point. The second point is this surely then comes down to being a communications issue. The citizens need to know how facile this process can be, in that they can cast their vote and be assured that it's secure and that they can do it easily. So, you know, the potential methods of that, there may be a cost back to it. And hence, I think that's what Councillor Guyverson's point is. We need to fund this. So every tax bill, every property owner gets a tax bill. We can put a notification in the tax bill. Yes, there may be a small cost to that, but it's going to get mailed out anyway. It's just the cost of the paper to print up the instructions. So I think in terms of getting increased voter turnout, it becomes this communication issue to show people how easy it can be and how much more convenient it can be, and therefore the concept of putting in a small amount on top of this, which is already, I believe, the cheapest option for an election, put a small amount in on top of this to make sure that every citizen has the information they need to successfully vote, would seem to be a very critical and important piece. So I would support the amendment, and I would intend to support the main motion when it comes to council. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor McConkey, your comments on the increase to 900,000.
Thank you very much, Chair Marks. Through you to the Commissioner. I understand Councillor Guyverson's motion would be to reassure the public that has some need of reassurance that this is all going to be fine. But when I heard Councillor Nicholson mention this 100,000 extra would be wholly inadequate, I'm just wondering, first of all, you had indicated to a previous speaker that there still would be the voting centers. So what would the $100,000 increase cover exactly? Do you know?
I'm sorry, Councillor McConkey, where were you directing your question?
Commissioner Adams?
Through Chair Marks to Councillor McConkey, so the extra $100,000 that Councillor Giberson is proposing, he's indicated that he'd like increased public communication and education on the in-person auctions.
Okay, so if I could ask through the chair to you again, the $100,000 would be more people at the voting centers? Would that be part of the communication? Or, I mean, the city will be communicating about the election regardless. So I'm just wondering where this $100,000 would be spent exactly. Any idea?
Through Chair Marks to Councillor McConkey, so we would use that extra $100,000 to increase voting centers as well as a more robust communication plan. Councillor Kerr had mentioned inserts into tax bills, etc. So we would just make sure that we'd have a fulsome communication plan so that residents would know of the change of the method of elections as well as having more physical locations.
Okay, if I could just go back for 2 years, the previous election, there were mail-outs. I think at least one, that would be normally included in that 800,000, the mail-out? We're not taking that out, right? So we're not adding an extra one in, or was that part of the 100,000? Adding an extra one in, another mail-out?
Through Chair Marks to Councillor McConkey, yes, there was a mail-out with the original budget back at the last election.
So there would be standard one anyhow, regardless of this motion or not? Regardless of this amendment, sorry. The city...
Through Councillor Marks to Councillor McConkey, we haven't written the communication plan for the upcoming elections, so it's hard for me to continue to respond to questions about communications because we're not sure what method of election that we're using, but regardless, we will have a robust communication plan. With the extra $100,000, we will just ensure that it's even more robust, and we will just add communications so that we properly inform the residents.
Okay, I appreciate those comments. I would just like to maybe comment, as others before me have, that this is the way to go. I 100% endorse the internet telephone and would pass on that I happened to call Timmins a couple of weeks ago, the purchasing manager there with the city of Timmins, and they've been doing it, and he can't understand why anyone wouldn't want to. But when it comes to this 100,000, when I hear another member of council say it's wholly inadequate, and I'm thinking, well, it seems like more than enough. I would say if it takes to reassure the public to put up more voting centers and more communication, yeah, but definitely I support the main motion as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Back to Councillor Giberson to maybe close on the amendment, unless there are any other comments from visiting councillors or members of the committee. Hearing none, Councillor Giberson to close on the amendment.
Thank you, Chair Marks. Yeah, just very briefly, and I think that the Commissioner did a fine job of answering a question that I was going to ask just to gain a little bit of clarification, and I hope that it will help members of the committee who may have reservations right now on this. It's just to additionally resource the strategy here. So, you know, I'm speaking very hypothetically here and just pulling numbers out of thin air, but let's just say that at the 800,000 amount, they would have, you know, budgeted $10,000 for social media promotion, and now they can spend $20,000, and instead of having I don't know, 7 full-page newspaper ads, they can run 9 full-page newspaper ads. Whatever the case is, the idea is just more communications, more ability to get information in front of our community, and ensure that we reach as many people as possible. And, you know, I've heard different numbers in the past in terms of the rules in advertising, the number of times somebody has to see something before they finally tune into the message in front of them. I don't know, I've heard 3 and I've heard 7 and other numbers over the years. The point is that it's about getting this in front of people as many times as possible.
and just to further resource staff in doing that. And as mentioned as well, I don't know how many in-person voting options there would actually be, physical locations in the city for this approach, but it would mean being able to set up, again, hypothetical number, 1 or 2 more, 3 more, I don't know. The point is it's just to ease the transition, and that's the idea behind this. So I hope that has made it sufficiently clear for members of the committee, and I'll ask for a recorded vote when the vote is called.
Thank you very much. And to ensure clarity, I was going to ask for a recorded vote, but you saved me the trouble. Thank you, Councillor Giberson. Madam Clerk, when you're ready.
On the amendment, Councillor Giberson,
Yes.
Councillor Hurst,
No.
Councillor Neal,
Yes.
Councillor Nicholson,
No.
Mayor Carter,
Yes.
Councillor Marks,
Yes. That amendment carries. Thank you very much. To the main motion, I'll start back at the top. Councillor Nicholson, you're first.
Can you hear me, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, I can hear you, sir. To the main motion, as amended.
I have sent a referral motion into staff. If they could put it on, please.
Thank you very much. Just one moment, please. Committee's indulgence, just waiting for the clerk to bring up Councillor Nicholson's motion. The direction and timing, Councillor Nicholson, before we vote on this referral motion?
Yeah, before I actually move the motion, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask a couple of questions to staff.
Well,
Is that in order?
that's not really procedurally correct. If you've got this motion before us, I would like you to move it straight away so we can move on with the business of the committee.
All right. I will move the motion.
Thank you very much.
As to direction, may I ask a question of staff?
Certainly can, as to direction, sir.
To date, who have you consulted with in the local community regarding this potential change in electoral system?
I'll allow the question, although I don't see how that goes to direction, but members of staff, could you please answer the question's query? Councillor's query?
Through Chair Marks to Councillor Nicholson, we have not consulted with the public.
Have you consulted with the school boards or the region?
Mr. Chair, I think the question's been asked and answered.
Yeah, and Ms. Councillor Nicholson, I'm not going to allow questions on a referral motion. Let's just go to the referral motion that you've moved. If it passes, this will be finished. If not, we will continue the debate under option 2, of which you can have a discussion. I'd like to call for a recorded vote on the referral motion, please. Ms. Lane, thank you.
Councillor Marks,
No.
Councillor Giberson,
No.
Councillor Hurst,
No.
Councillor Neal,
No.
Councillor Nicholson, Mayor Carter? I'm sorry, Councillor Nicholson?
I'm sorry.
That's my fault, my apologies.
Who are you asking for?
Your vote on the referral,
Yes.
and Mayor Carter.
No?
The motion loses. Councillor Nicholson, back to you on the main motion as amended.
All right. Just so I can be clear, since I wasn't able to ask the question directly, now that we're on the main motion by Mayor Carter on the system, question to staff on a couple of things. Have you consulted with the region of Durham, as their election will be on the ballot as well electronically if this passes?
Through Chair Marks to Councillor Nicholson, no, we have not discussed with the region.
Okay, can I assume from that answer that you more than likely have not discussed this with the Durham District School Board, the Durham District Catholic School Board, or the District French Language School Boards?
Through Chair Marks to Councillor Nicholson, no, we have not, as council decides the method of election.
Okay. So would it be correct in assuming that the report as laid out before us is the only consultation that has occurred on this particular item?
Through Chair Marks to Councillor Nicholson, there has been no formal consultation, but as the report outlines, we have contacted other municipalities that have undertaken the same process, including Ajax and Pickering.
Did the staff receive any inquiries from the public or any other individuals regarding the method of election and request an investigation and changing the system?
Through Chair Marks to Councillor Nicholson, yes, at the last election, we did receive feedback from members of the public as well as some of those that ran for office. In addition, we've also received feedback from the AODA Alliance, who's been lobbying, since 2012 to Elections Ontario to implement internet and telephone voting.
Who is the AODA Alliance?
Accessibility Ontario Disability Association.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, the concern I have here, and obviously I disagree with the mayor's analysis. One of the strongest arguments he made was to come through the method of a system of election that encourages people to feel empowered and part of the process. Step one in this process is to ignore them. Step one in this process is to disempower the electorate. If we put this motion before us, we're saying to the electorate, your opinion doesn't count. Your participation is not necessary. Your ideas and thoughts are not relevant to our decision. We're also saying that to our colleagues at the region, at the school boards. We're saying your opinion doesn't matter. I fail to understand, respectfully, how we can make the argument that we want to encourage participation and encourage a process where people feel comfortable about the electorate and the elections and the process they're going through when we haven't discussed anything with them. It appears that the only people whose relevance is involved in this process are the staff members that wrote the report and those on council who are voting on it. The remaining 170,000 plus citizens of our city aren't relevant. If this is a defensible system, if this is a system that the council believes the public supports and it can be easily justified, then why are we afraid of going to the public and asking their viewpoint? Why are we afraid of hearing what they have to say? There are many people in our community who have grave concerns about this system, and I'm one of them. In the current system, the Municipal Act says that any citizen has the right to challenge the election result and ask for a review either by the process outlined in the Act or even by a judge if necessary in a court. How does one review a system that has no paper ballots, that has no backup system, that it can't be reviewed by the citizen, it can't be reviewed by any of the candidates, it can't be reviewed by the media if they require? The entire system is a closed system where it's kept inside a computer. What control do we have over that process? Right now, the reason we went to the optical scan system years ago was it gave the best of both worlds. It gave a computer tabulation system while still retaining a paper ballot. So if there were any discrepancies or any issues in elections, we could go back and look at those paper ballots and ensure that the right result was reported. It allowed the process of the Municipal Act to be brought forward. I don't see anywhere in this system there's any opportunity for the public, for the candidates, for the media, for anyone to monitor, to determine that the result that's reported from the computer, in fact, is the accurate result or not. If there is a control, it hasn't been placed in the report. But most importantly, and I think the part that creates the gravest concern for me, is the ability of individuals to hack the system. We have seen in the United States recently numerous attempts to hack the system, to the fact that they're spending millions, if not tens of millions, in this ongoing election in the United States to stop the hacking of systems. What I don't understand in this process, and I would like to ask staff to explain it to me, is how do I ensure that the person that's voting either through a computer or through a telephone is the actual voter? I wonder if staff could address that to you.
Commissioner Adams to election security for Councillor Nicholson.
One moment, please, Chair Marks.
Yes.
We're just looking for the reference in the documentation.
Committee's indulgence. Thank you.
Through the chair. Hello?
Yes.
Through the chair.
Who's speaking, please?
This is Mary Madero, City Clerk.
Madam Clerk, please proceed.
Thank you. Section 2 of the supplemental information describes the process as to how an individual has to vote, as they require their personal identification number, as well as a password that is only known to them. Sometimes it is their date of birth, but it will be dependent on the internet provider that we use. And there are processes that are in place to ensure that this doesn't happen. And if I can refer the committee to Part 4 of the supplementary information where it talks about voter fraud, it is ultimately the responsibility of the voter to ensure that they do not commit voter fraud, and there are specific penalties in place, both in the Municipal Elections Act as well as in the criminal code regarding to stealing election packages.
Councillor Nicholson, to you.
To have a new elections list brought forward?
Sorry, you may need to repeat that, Councillor Nicholson. You came in halfway through your question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How will the voter list be compiled initially?
Through the chair, currently we have the voters list. It resides in the software that we purchased for the last election, DataFix, and we would receive the information from MPAC and just cross-reference and ensure that we don't have duplicates, and we would do a cleansing as we have always done.
Okay, and once you have that list, you then have to reach out to the voter to get them to initiate a process to secure a PIN number and a password. Is that correct?
Through the chair, this is, it's Laura Davis. No, Councillor Nicholson, the information is provided from the preliminary list of electors on the voters list. Every voter who's eligible automatically is generated a personal identification number, and then they would then use that. It's a single-step process to access the information to the voters, the voting platform.
So for I give an example myself. I'm on the voters list, and someone sends me this secret personal identification number, and I have to somehow enter this somewhere in order to have the ability to vote. Is that correct?
That would be one option. So the voters information package would include clear instructions for how to vote either via internet, to vote via telephone, or to attend one of our voter assistance centers where you can vote in person using the technology, but there would be additional trained staff that would be available to assist. So that voter information package would include all of that information as well as the information you need to actually go in and access the voting platform.
And therefore my vote would be attached to this PIN number?
As your identifier, but that information, the integrity of the vote and the ballot that you cast still remains confidential. So no one, even DataFix or wherever the vote ends up, whatever provider we decide on, would still not have access to know that this PIN number voted for this candidate.
So it will be hived off somewhere in the computer where the PIN number goes to one location to say you voted, and the actual vote goes to some other location in the computer where it's actually recorded. Is that correct?
I can't speak to the technology specifically through the chair, but my understanding is that the PIN number is just to provide the access. It's not tied to your ballot. It's just to strike you off the list as having voted.
Okay. And if I'm voting by phone, how do I do that?
It would be similar through the chair, just a series of push buttons. So enter your PIN number, and then it's a series of dials as opposed to clicking on a screen.
All right, under the current system, if I go in and I mark my ballot and I happen to notice just before I hand it to the clerk that I've made a mistake and I marked the wrong candidate, that I didn't want to mark that candidate, I can go to the deputy returning officer in that hall, have that ballot paper struck, and be given a new ballot paper saying I made an error. How do I do that on an electronic or phone system?
Through the chair, without having the provider selected, I couldn't speak specifically, but if it's on your screen, you would have the opportunity to review before clicking submit. It would be similar to once your ballot has been put through the tabulator and it's in the ballot box, you can't get it back. So once you've clicked submit, it would be, your ballot would then be cast, but you would, I assume, have the opportunity to review ahead of time.
How would I do that on a phone?
My understanding is the process is similar.
I don't have a picture on my phone. I've got one of these old phones that it just has a speaker and an earpiece. How do I vote?
Through the chair, I believe that the system would identify that this is the person you have voted for, and if this is what you wish to cast your vote as, then you press a certain number. It's similar to the technology we use for our assistive hearing devices. When an elector who wishes to use that technology, it's several prompts, and then at some point you press a certain number and it takes you to that vote.
And that would all depend on the technology of the provider as they would present it to us. Is that correct?
Through the chair, I'm not sure I understand.
Well, at some point, the report says if we pass in principle the internet and telephone, you're going to go out to some provider who's actually then going to provide us with the system that they're going to use.
Through the chair, that is correct, and we would ask all the questions that have been proposed to us, plus many others that we also will have prior to selecting the internet provider.
And who's going to make that decision? Just the staff?
Through Chair Marks to Councillor Nicholson, we would follow the process under our procurement purchasing bylaw.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. I was thought that was the process was going to be. So we're going to, if we pass this motion today, if we endorse this step, this is the last step the council is going to be involved in, or the public is going to be involved in. Everything else is done by staff. Is that correct?
Through the chair to Councillor Nicholson, yes, that's correct, and that's similar to other municipalities.
So basically, at no point in this process will the public have any say in this whatsoever. That there's not going to be a future meeting where the provider that's tentatively chosen is going to be brought in to give a chance to walk through to the public or walk through the council how their process works before we finally commit ourselves to the process. Do I have that correct? That's not going to happen?
Through the chair to Councillor Nicholson, this is no different than any other election or any other municipality.
So at this particular moment, this is the key moment, if this motion passes, we're basically, and please correct me if I've misunderstood, because I don't want to be wrong in any way. This is if this motion passes and it passes council, there will be no opportunity for any member of the public to learn about the system, understand the system, know the system before it's approved, and they're simply going to have to adjust whatever they arrives on their doorstep at some point before the next election. Do I have that correct?
Through the chair to Councillor Nicholson, that is correct, but as we've identified, there would be a comprehensive communication plan, as well as there would be lots of opportunities for in-person for those that are uncomfortable with the technology, so that staff would assist them.
Again, to staff, in our VAC centers, wherever they're set up, is there a potentiality of having a paper ballot and an Opticon machine that can count those who are only comfortable with paper ballots? Is there some way to have a hybrid so that each of those VAC centers, there could at least be one Opticon machine and one opportunity to cast a paper ballot rather than use the technology for those that are uncomfortable with the security or the safety of the technology?
Through the chair to Councillor Nicholson, staff have outlined those two options. That was 3A and 3B, and that was the hybrid option.
Okay, but how many VAC centers are you planning to have?
Through the chair to Councillor Nicholson, it's premature for us to identify how many VAC locations that we're going to have for the upcoming election.
Would I be safe to say that it would probably be less than the number of polling stations we have for the last election?
Chair Marks to Councillor Nicholson, that would be correct.
So we're providing less opportunity for people to travel to close by polling stations. One of the issues that I've raised constantly, and has been raised to me constantly, was that the current polling stations are too far away from people's homes. And that is, now they're going to be even further away. Do I understand that correctly?
Through the chair to Councillor Marks, again, we haven't identified the locations of the voting centers, but the internet and telephone voting option, you can vote from the convenience of your home or on your way to work. You can vote anywhere. It doesn't have to be at a specific location.
If you're comfortable with the technology.
Through Chair Marks to Councillor Nicholson, that's correct, but as I've identified, there will be voting assistance centers for those that are not comfortable with the technology, for staff to assist those.
Okay, but again, I'm trying to understand this. At the voting assistance centers, the only assistance will be more technology. I got that correct?
I'm sorry, Councillor Nicholson, you'll have to repeat that question. I missed it.
I will, thank you. At the voter assistance center, when someone goes there and they're not comfortable voting on a computer, they're not comfortable voting by phone, and they go to the voter assistance center, we give them another computer or another phone. We don't give them a paper ballot option, do we?
Through Councillor Marks to Councillor Nicholson, that's correct.
So the question I put to you earlier and is, what would it take to provide for those that either don't trust or are not comfortable with the technology approach? What would it cost us to include one opportunity for them to cast a paper ballot and then count it centrally?
Councillor, I don't see why asking the same question will yield different results. You've heard the commissioner's response. Excuse me. You've heard the commissioner's response on the hybrid model that has been rejected, and now we have option 2 on the table. Your other colleagues would like to get in on this conversation. I'd like you to wind up your questions and your comments, please, sir.
With all due respect, Mr. Chairman, I know you'd like me to wind up on asking questions on this so you can drive it through, but I do have serious questions. I just asked, how much would it cost to have a paper ballot option at a VAC, and they could be counted centrally once they're submitted?
Commissioner Adams, would that fall under
So through you, Chair Marks, to Councillor Nicholson, underneath financial implications of the report, it's page 19 of the agenda. It identifies in option 3A, 1,300,000, or option B, 1,500,000.
And that's for a paper ballot option in every VAC. What I'm asking for, and possibly I'm not being clear, what would the cost be to have a paper ballot filled out in each VAC, collected in a secure ballot box, and then taken to one location to be counted separate from the other system? What would it cost to have one Opticon and paper ballots available for those who are not comfortable with the technology?
Through Councillor Marks to Councillor Nicholson, so the report that was before you at the last meeting identifies that because we have 25 different ballot types for each of the five wards, we would have to print all of those ballots because it would be hard for us to determine how many quantities of each of the wards we would need to print. So we'd have to print for the entire election. So it's a duplication of that process. So it would be like we were running two different elections, a full paper ballot election and then the electronic telephone voting election.
Okay. And my last question to staff, so that I can understand the process. Can you explain to me how I challenge the result if I believe the result is an error?
Through Chair Marks to Councillor Nicholson, although the votes are potentially going to be cast electronically, whether through telephone or through the website, there would still be printouts that would be provided so that there's still that. I think what you're asking is whether or not there's checks and balances, so those would still be in place. And this is no different. We'd follow the same processes that other municipalities have adopted this process. So as the report indicated, the last one, more and more municipalities are moving this way, so we would follow the provider as well as the best practices that other municipalities have used.
final comments,
Do
Councillor?
you know, when I'm done, I'll let you know, Mr. Chairman. Do we know what those processes are now? Or are we going to develop these as we move forward?
Through Chair Marks to Councillor Nicholson, we haven't got into that level of detail as of yet because the first step is to choose the voting method, and then we will start to develop those processes. But as I mentioned earlier, both Ajax and Pickering, as well as the municipality of Clarington, will be using this format, so we can lean on our local municipalities as well as others that have done this.
Okay. Is there any municipality in Ontario over 160,000 people who have used this system?
Through Chair Marks to Councillor Nicholson, so there was a municipal comparison chart that was attached to the report, as well as we identified in the report how many municipalities had adopted the internet telephone method. So I believe it was over half of the Ontario municipalities, and we're seeing that that will again increase for the upcoming election.
I read that list. We would be the largest municipalities to have that system based on that list. Are you aware of any other municipalities of Oshawa size or larger who have signed up for the system?
Through the chair to Councillor Nicholson, City of Markham is definitely higher, has more population than us.
And they've signed up for this system for this term?
They've used it several years, and yes, again, they will be using it again. They've been using it since 2003.
All right. Those are my questions, Mr. Chairman. Just a brief comment, because I think this is a fait accompli. Obviously, some reconsideration has occurred from our last meeting. I'm not going to suppose how that happened, but it's happened. I believe we as a council have a duty and responsibility to consult with the public on this type of methodology of the elections that in fact is there for their benefit, not for ours. It appears on the face of this report that this is a process that is to make it easier on staff and make it easier on current politicians, and that at this point, we have not sought the consent of the electorate. It wasn't on the ballot asking to change the system from a paper ballot to electronic ballot in the last election. Didn't ask that question. We have not held any meetings or even consultation of any sort with our electorate to determine if they want to make this change. If this motion passes today, then we are imposing upon them without their consent a method of election that we didn't even have the confidence to explain to them before we made the decision. I do not believe that is in any way what can be classified as an accountable or transparent process. We hold public consultations on noise bylaws. We hold public consultations on dust bylaws. We hold public consultations on a wide range of bylaws and regulations that could impact the public. When it comes to how they vote and how they make an opportunity to cast their most important decision as electors within our community, we seem to have no interest in asking their opinion whatsoever. And that is the biggest objection I have. I think we're going to pay the price electorally for that decision. I think it's totally inappropriate for 10 members of council and the mayor to make this decision solely without any public input or participation, without any consultation to our neighboring school boards who are also on this ballot, with no consultation to the region who are also on this ballot, including the regional chair. We are literally imposing upon them a system without any even consultation whatsoever with them. So it appears to me that this is a decision that's being made solely by the council of the city of Oshawa, without any input from any other party other than the staff report, and I think that's the wrong process. We have not made the decision to refer this to the public to have their input. We've not called a public meeting. We're simply imposing upon them what we believe as an entity is the best system without even asking their opinion. And I think that, with all respect to my colleagues, is totally wrong and inappropriate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Giberson, to the main motion as amended.
Thank you, Chair Marks. I'm sure that back whenever we went to tabulators, there were concerns that were raised over change. I'm sure that back whenever the norm in voting went from a show of hands in a town hall to a secret ballot, there were objections to that change as well. You know, I appreciate that change always raises questions, but there are opportunities in this particular change as well, and people lead busier lives than they used to. People commute. People in our community who commute, and getting you know, the time that they leave in the morning to the time that they get home makes it very challenging for them to make that window. There are all sorts of factors here that I think there is no one perfect answer. We could certainly increase the costs substantially, as noted in the report, and go with a multitude of options. You know, we could let that cost go up endlessly, and have, you know, people go knocking at doors with sealed ballot boxes and say, "Don't forget to vote." But of course, the cost would be altogether prohibitive. Somewhere a balance is struck, and somewhere council makes a decision. I don't necessarily agree that this has been done with no public input. I don't see any letters that came in from anyone in the community attached to the agenda. I received 2 emails. They were in opposition. One of them, however, did include some misunderstanding on the options available to them, that they could still go and vote in person, and I highlighted that in my reply. it did somewhat change the impression of what was being considered by council. Like with any of our items on any of our agendas, the public and concerned parties are able to speak as delegations. They're able to write letters in. This one is no different. And it was publicized by local media that this was being considered by committee and ultimately by council. And it hasn't resulted in a groundswell of opposition or support for that matter. It hasn't really created a whole lot of noise in general, which is not to dismiss anyone who maybe has spoken up about their either support or concerns. However, there are opportunities for the public to speak on this, and they haven't jumped forward with the opportunities that are available. And sometimes part of the council's job is to make decisions. That's what we're elected to do. And I would like to note that based on the experience in 2022, if this should move forward, there will be opportunity at that point. Again, it's not going to close the door forever. After that experience, there will be opportunity for the public to provide their feedback on the experience, positive or negative, ways that it can be improved or changed. This is not a door gets slammed shut forever decision. And as has been mentioned before, we are living through a time that is, it's not over yet. It's one that, that prohibits public movement and public gathering. We all hope that we will be done that by the 2022 election, but we don't know that. And we still want to have ways for people to participate in the democratic process, should they so choose, without having to be concerned about their health and their safety. There are people with disabilities that would, pandemic or no pandemic, that would benefit from such an option. And it cannot be emphasized enough that this will not eliminate the option of going to vote in person. People will still have that option, and I'm sure that there will be many people who will exercise that. And I want them to be able to exercise that option if they so choose. And I think most importantly, in terms of, this is the system of the election, in terms of casting the ballot, that is being modified. But it still defends time-honored democratic principles such as one person, one vote. It still defends time-honored democratic principles that if a person is eligible to vote, that they will be able to cast their vote. None of that is being taken away. That will continue to be defended. The methodology will shift, but the core principles that are at the basis of our municipal democratic institution and democratic principles are maintained with this change. After 2022, if there is feedback, we are still in a position to consider that feedback and consider a change in course or how to modify the path after that. So I will be supporting this at committee and at council as well. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. I have Councillor Neal on my list. Councillor Neal.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. I'd like to refer this back for further consultation with direct and that means with our residents and with our municipal partners.
Councillor Neal, as you recall, Councillor Nicholson moved a referral motion which was defeated. So at this time, I'm not going to accept your referral motion back to staff. Do you have any comments on the main motion as amended?
Well, his referral was to do with the 2018 candidates.
Point of order?
1 second, Councillor Nicholson. That is true, sir, but it still had to go through the staff mechanism, so my ruling is the referral back to staff is not going to be allowable at this time. Councillor Nicholson, point of order.
Yes, I also want to object to your ruling, Mr. Chairman. My motion was to have a public meeting, a public consultation. Councillor Neal's motion is to go send it back to staff for further investigation. There's two different motions. We can't drive this through because we don't like the motion.
Just one moment, please. Thank you very much. Just one moment. I'm just having the clerk pull up to clarify Councillor Nicholson's referral motion. Just one moment. So, Councillor Nicholson, your referral referred back to staff for all consultations with candidates. Councillor Neal, your referral is to refer back to staff for comment. That's not precise enough to overrule what I'm talking about with in terms of referral vote.
Consultation.
Consultation for what, sir?
Well, from the residents and our community partners.
So they're both consultations in that the referral is back to staff for consultations from a wide variety of people. So I'm not going to accept a referral motion back to staff for further consultation when that's already been defeated. And I think and I think the essence of the committee has been clear. The referral motion back for consultation has been defeated.
Well, with all due respect to Mr. Chair, if I could just have a minute of your time, Councillor Nicholson, with all due respect, talked about the 2018 candidates to refer back. I'm talking about with the residents of Oshawa and our municipal partners that we have not consulted with. Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's a big difference there.
Just one moment, sir.
Thank you.
All right, in order to ensure transparency and to make sure that this thing gets exactly what the kind of care and consideration that has been demanded by its members, I will be referred to, I'm in the mood to accept the referral motion back under Councillor Neal's request, and I would call for a recorded vote on that referral. Jennifer Lane, when you are prepared. Thank you.
Councillor Marks?
That's a referral back to staff for consultation with the public? No.
Councillor
And
Giverson?
municipal councillors and municipal partners.
And municipal partners, thank you. And my vote is no.
Thank you.
Councillor Giverson?
No.
Councillor Hurst?
No.
Councillor Neal?
Yes.
Councillor Nicholson?
Yes.
Mayor Carter?
No.
Councillor Neal, that motion is defeated. Do you have any comments on the main motion as amended?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just am a little bit, and what Councillor Nicholson was speaking to as well. I'm not going to go over, I think he explained it very well, as to the locations. I don't know if this money is going to be spent on our locations. We haven't decided where those locations are going to be. They might be smaller locations. They might be fewer locations. And that bothers me, Mr. Chair. That really bothers me because I think that if we go ahead with this, that we should be spending the money to bolster our locations so people are comfortable. There's a lot of people there that like to have that paper ballot in their hand. They want to mark that X. They want to go to that voting place, and no one can deny that there are people that want to do it. Even though the technology is there, it doesn't matter. It still doesn't matter. They want to go to a voting place near their residence in their ward. And I've heard it time and time again through, I've won 7 elections, and if you're going to tell me that I don't know what I'm talking about, go right ahead. Then explain that to the residents that are voting, that they have, and they've told me time and time again, they want to go to a location near their residence. They want to have an accessible location, and sometimes they've gone, it doesn't matter what kind of weather it is, they make the effort to go. How are you going to deny those residents that kind of attitude towards our municipal elections? They feel closer to their councillors and their mayor and the municipal representatives more than any of the other elected representatives, I can tell you that much. And you know it as well as I do. You're a councillor as well, Mr. Chair, so you know that. And I want to make sure that if I get assurances that some of this money is going to be under this additional in-person options, like if I can ask the question to you, Mr. Chair, what exactly is that? Does that mean? Does that mean increased additional physical voting places, or what, Mr. Chair? Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor, just for clarity, that's a question that you're asking staff about the allocation of the 900,000. If this motion were to carry, where would that be spent? In-person voting? Is that your question, sir? Just for clarity?
Yes. Yes, thank you.
Commissioner Adams, could you help the councillor with his query?
Through you, Chair Marks, to Councillor Neal, yes, indeed, the additional funds would be used to increase our voting locations.
Councillor Neal?
Okay, thank you. Well, that puts some comfort level to it, myself and to residents. And would that mean enhanced voter locations, or more, or both? Thank you.
Through the chair to Councillor Neal, it would involve more voter locations.
Okay, more voting locations for a paper ballot.
Through the chair to Councillor Neal, depending on the method of election, right now we're considering internet and telephone voting, and so it would be more voting locations.
But not necessarily for a paper ballot. Through you, Mr. Chair.
Through the chair to Councillor Neal, no.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. I have quite a speakers list building up here. I have Councillor McConkey and then followed by Councillor Hurst. And I'd like to close with Mayor Carter once we get through some of these speakers lists. So Councillor McConkey.
Thank you, Chair Marks. Through you, a question to Commissioner Adams. When would we, the City of Oshawa, be able to add a referendum question? Is there a deadline that we have to get in under?
Through the chair to Councillor McConkey, we're just looking that up because indeed there is a deadline.
Yeah, I wouldn't want us to miss it if there's some issue, and I just would hope that that could be made, I guess, come forward at a certain point in time when we don't want to lose the opportunity if there is a question to go on the ballot. Thank you. That's my question.
Through the chair, depending, this is the city clerk, depending on what the referendum question is, if it's related to the method of election, then internet voting would not be a method that council could establish at this time. Deadline for the referendum question is May the 1st, 2021, same as adopting a method of election.
Thank you. That answers my question. It wasn't specifically about internet voting. I just think that there may be something. There hasn't been, I think, a referendum question since 2014. There wasn't one last election. Maybe the last one was in 2010, or I think there was one in 2014 about election of the chair, maybe. Anyhow.
I'm just puzzled to see how a referendum question ties into this motion before us, Councillor McConkey, but maybe you can clarify what you're getting at.
Actually, it did not tie in, and thank you for pointing that out. I just would like to know at this point in time, because May will come around faster than we think. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll now move on to Councillor Hurst.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At the last meeting, I was in support of the hybrid option. And now with having the opportunity to reflect on this even more and information coming forward, and of course, more robust discussion over the course of time, including today, I am going to be supporting the internet and telephone voting technologies. And I know it was highlighted before about people not having the experience of casting a paper ballot. But when I read the report, and if you would indulge me, Mr. Chair, for the benefit of people who don't have this report in front of them, I'd like to quote from the report that's in front of us today, that the Voter Assistance Center bridges the gap between paper ballot and fully digital processes. The Voter Assistance Center will provide a similar voting experience to paper balloting procedures. However, a paper ballot and tabulator are placed with kiosks to allow voters to use a device and internet access to cast their ballot. The elector would attend at a Voter Assistance Center, present their voter information, and be struck off the voters list. Instead of a paper ballot, the elector would be provided access to an electronic system similar to the at-home internet voting process to allow them to mark and cast their electronic ballot. Trained election officials would be available in the Voter Assistance Center to provide assistance to all voters as requested. And that's the end of the quote from that passage. So the experience is of the same as the paper ballot, in my opinion. The security is there, as has been provided to us by the clerk's department. This isn't a new system, and as a person, in my own personal capacity, I am really reluctant to change. But again, I will be brought kicking and screaming into the 21st century, as I said before. So going forward, I would think that these voting assistance centers, we can have more of them. There's more outreach to long-term care and other areas, like we did up on in Ward 2, for example, the high-density residential developments, to encourage more voter turnout. And I can't see any more than we can do than this to make it more accessible for folks that are housebound for whatever reason. It takes into account bad weather. The only thing that's going to make this fail is if we have a power outage. And if that happens, well, it happens. Also further reaching out to the various school boards and the region of Durham. Well, they've already had electronic voting experiences with other Lakeshore communities here in Durham region. So I think that's a moot point. So anyways, to wrap up my own opinion at this point in time, I think anything that's been said to date provides us with the due diligence that we've done so far. And if any further information comes to light subsequent to to any decision we make today, we can do it. But we have to make a decision now, basically now, excuse me, because time is of the essence in order to the process to be started, to acquire appropriate service provider, and to get the mechanisms in place. And I'm sure over the course of the next 2 years, there will be communication of various forms, no matter which way we decide, whether through social media, city's website, the print media, etc., about which way we're going. So at this point in time, that's all I have to say. I'd like to get on with this and continue on with today's meeting. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. On my list, I have Mayor Carter, and I see Councillor Nicholson wants to speak. Mayor Carter, did you have some comments before I go to Councillor Nicholson, or would you like to be afforded the last spot to speak? Okay, not hearing Mayor Carter. Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have sent to staff a further amendment to Part 4 to the motion.
Okay, just one moment, please, sir. Committee's indulgence, just waiting for the amendment to come up. Sorry, just having some technical difficulties. Just one moment, please. Okay, I think we can see the amendment up there. Councillor Nicholson, if you would kindly read that and give us your comments, please. Councillor Nicholson? Okay, members of the committee, I can see that the amendment says that the recommendation of the Corporate Service Committee be presented to City Council at its meeting in November of 2020 to allow the public to offer its views on the recommendation being presented. Councillor Nicholson, I wonder if you're there. Okay, members of the committee, any comments on this amendment that's been presented? Hearing none, I'll try Councillor Nicholson again. The clerk is advising that I think we've lost him. Can somebody try to reestablish connection with Councillor Nicholson, please? I'm sorry. Sorry, just, Councillor Nicholson, are you on the line with us? The clerk is telling me that Councillor Nicholson is back. Sorry, members of the committee, we're just trying to reestablish connection with the mover of this amendment.
Councillor Nicholson, can you hear me?
Members of the committee, excuse us, we're having some technical difficulties down here in the chamber regarding our connections to some of you. Just give me one moment, please.
I just checked the web stream and it looks like they may be having, or we may be having connection issues right now.
Thank you very much, Councillor Iverson. I greatly appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm hearing the mayor, and I just heard Councillor Giberson. It's Councillor Neal, so at least the three of us, I think, can.
Yeah, I think
I'm here as well.
Okay.
Brian's there too, so it sounds like it's in the chamber, so just give them a couple minutes, guys.
Well, thank you, Mayor.
I think my motion broke the internet.
This would not surprise me.
Members of the committee, can you hear me?
Yes.
Members of the committee, can you hear me?
Yes?
Okay, thanks. Okay, it looks like we're back. Sorry, we had a connection issue. The staff is working diligently to fix it. Councillor Nicholson, you have an amendment here. Would you like to discuss your amendment, please? Please read it out for the committee and please give us your comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The recommendation is data part 4, that the recommendation of the Corporate Services Committee presented to City Council at its meeting in November of 2020 to allow the public to offer its views on the recommendation being presented. This is a result of the comment actually made by Councillor Giberson. Councillor Giberson said there had been no response to any of the suggestions that were considered at the last Corporate Services Committee, and I seek to remind members of the committee that no recommendations were made at that committee, that every motion lost. So we had not yet endorsed a method of election. The committee had not reached a conclusion at that time as to which recommendation it would put to council for council's consideration, thus making it virtually impossible for the members of the public to offer a comment on that recommendation, as none were made. Secondly, we are meeting electronically, so the great difficulty for the public to even be made aware of a recommendation is already stretched due to the fact that we're dealing with technology which we all recognize is difficult to work with, as we've just seen, and is even more difficult for members of the public to participate in and follow through, as opposed to a public meeting or a meeting of the normal type that's done non-electronically. My motion is simply to suggest that, because I can read the numbers, and it appears that sections 1, 2, and 3 are going to be passed by committee. I'm simply asking for the opportunity that when this motion is brought forward, rather than bringing it forward in a couple of weeks at the October meeting, that it go forward in the November meeting. That would allow both the members of the public and members of council to let people know what the recommendation is, to let the media report on what the recommendation that is coming out of this committee that's going to council for a final vote and bylaw is before we actually cast a vote. This would then allow the members of the public, those that are interested or those that have concerns, the opportunity to express their views to the members of council prior to the final vote. If we don't do this, if we simply continue to drive this process with the speed of an express train through committees and through council with no public consultation, no opportunity for the public even to be made aware of the motion before the vote, other than the very limited few weeks that are between this committee meeting and the next meeting in council, I think we do a disservice to the process. If members of council have confidence in their recommendation, they should feel confident that the public will agree with them or the public will support their position. If the public does not, then that would at least provide the council with the opportunity to either agree or disagree with the recommendation of the committee following that information for whatever shape and form it comes in. We've already decided that committee not to hold a public meeting. We've already decided we're not going to consult with the region and the school boards. We've already decided that we're not going to refer it back to staff for further investigation. This is the last opportunity for the public to have any meaningful, even if somewhat limited, involvement in the process. And surely, in an item as important as this is, we should be doing the bare minimum to allow the members of the public to express their point of view to council before council finally votes on this issue. And I respectfully ask for your support.
Thank you very much, Councillor Nicholson. I see Councillor Neal wants to speak to the amendment, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I believe that we have to go to the residents and we have to go to our municipal partners. I think that we should give them the opportunity to at least have some feedback. This is an important, a very, very important activity that takes place every 4 years. And we're always saying, well, let's get feedback from the public. Well, something like this, as important as the residents electing their municipal residents, I believe that it has merit. And I would like to ask for a recorded vote on this if it's not already been asked, because I think it's important enough that we should be doing this, at least going to a council meeting and spending some time to hear what the residents have to say. And I've heard some councillors say, you know, with this time of these times we're in and everything like that, well, that even makes us more closer to the public than ever before. So I believe this is something that has to be taken into consideration seriously. So that would mean, of course, that at the City Council meeting in November, we have the time. There's no reason not to do this. If there is a reason, I'd like to hear what it is. To not do this, I guess, is the question. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. And your request for a recorded vote is noted, Councillor Neal. Councillor Giberson, to the amendment, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Aside from maybe adding a little bit of time for that input to come in, I don't see the purpose of kicking this can down the road by 4 extra weeks. We have a council meeting at the end of the month. As all members of council are aware, the preference is for these processes to be undertaken at the committee level in terms of feedback and delegations from the public and so forth. However, it certainly hasn't stopped us in the past, and I don't think it will in the future, from hearing from people who decide to submit letters or delegations after a committee has deliberated and hear it instead at council. I don't think that it's going to be any different with this one. We're now, towards the beginning of October. Our next council meeting is towards the end of the month. And there has been press attention, media attention on this matter for people to weigh in or to be aware that it is being considered and to weigh in. And I don't know that there really is much, in terms of the law of diminishing returns. I'm not sure that there is an enormous benefit in kicking this can down the road by 4 weeks. I still welcome hearing from the public between now and the future council meeting when this is decided. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Madam Clerk, I believe Councillor Neal's called for a recorded vote.
On the amendment?
This is on the amendment. Members of the committee.
Councillor Neal?
Yes.
Councillor Giberson?
No.
Councillor Hurst?
No.
Councillor Nicholson?
Yes.
Mayor Carter?
No.
Councillor Marks?
Yes. That motion is defeated by a 3-3 tie. Mayor Carter, the main motion as amended, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate all members in the spirited conversation that was brought forward this morning. I want to say a special thank you to the authors of the memo and also the amount of information that is there. I mean, the reality being is that we're using a technology that's 100 years old. And I think most people are very comfortable with it. I'm pleased about the steps that our staff have taken to be able to kind of address all of the kind of concerns that they believe may arise. We've learned from other communities in regards to what they've seen. And I'm pleased about the direction we're going. As I started my comments when I moved the amendment forward, I keep on talking about modernization, innovation, and diversification. Being diverse in regards to the way we think and the things that we do, being innovative in regards to looking at new technologies and ways of doing it, and of course the modernization of where many municipalities are also going, not only in this issue, but in many different issues in regards to how do we have outreach, how do we have connection, how do we talk to our constituents. This still doesn't excuse any of us from doing the extra things that are necessary to be able to engage the public. Make sure that we hear their concerns, hear their ideas and their concepts, and continue to be able to advocate on behalf of them. So I'm going to encourage everybody to continue to do what they do on a daily basis, which is reach out to your constituents, let them know that their concerns are heard, that we are modernizing in things that we're doing, but we also have a respect in regards to the past and understand that process. My hope is that these two paths will truly be able to create the opportunity to see more people engaged. As all of us will agree, municipal elections and municipal participation by our constituents is really, really important. Decisions that this council make each and every day really affect everybody's life. And it saddens me to be able to see that we had one of the lowest turnouts in our elections recently. And I'm glad to be able to see that this will be part of a conversation over the next 2 years to be able to engage people in regards to not only this new method, but also encourage all of us to participate. And I hope that all of us carry that message forward. Your vote matters, your voice matters, your participation matters, in whatever form it is. And I, again, thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to be able to close, and I ask for a recorded vote.
Thank you, Ms. Lane, when you're ready.
Mayor Carter?
Yes.
Councillor Giberson?
Yes.
Councillor Hurst?
Yes.
Councillor Neal?
Yes.
Councillor Nicholson? Councillor Nicholson?
No.
Councillor Marks?
Yes. Thank you very much, members of the committee. Moving on to the public consent agenda. And are there any items that council or committee would like pulled for discussion? I believe Councillor Neal pulled 2026. Madam Clerk?
That's correct, and 2033.
Yeah, thanks, Mr.
Oh,
Chair.
one sec, Mr. Neal, or Councillor Neal, we are still looking for members of the committee to pull other items on the consent agenda. Members of the committee, are there any other item on the public consent agenda they'd like pulled for discussion? Please note, Corp 2026 has been pulled by Councillor Neal. Okay, hearing none. Councillor Hurst, do you have a motion for us, please?
Yeah, thank you. That all items listed under the heading of public consent agenda for the October 5th, 2020 corporate services meeting be adopted as recommended.
Are there any opposed to that motion? Hearing none, thank you very much. Councillor Neal, Corp 2026, Noise Bylaw 11282 and noisy vehicles. All yours, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I brought this back. It's been on the outstanding list, and I thank staff for bringing it forward here
Sorry,
today.
Councillor Neal, sorry to interrupt. Just a matter of process. Are you moving the recommendation to speak to or a motion of your own,
Yes.
sir? Okay, the recommendation's on the floor. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think my main concern was, and like, we have to be realistic. Our noise bylaw needs enhancement. And and if you take young mothers that are just getting home from working all day, they pick their children up at the daycare, they get the children in finally comfortable in a situation, and and finally the children are put down to sleep. Like that is what our residents are doing every single day in our subdivisions. And then someone decides to just rev her up and come down that quiet residential street and just throw complete chaos into everything that has been planned that evening for that young mother trying to make a living and trying to look after her children. So it's very, very unfair, Mr. Chair, what's taking place. And I noticed the noise yesterday just coming off the main streets, and that's built into the intersections, Mr. Chair, and it's not right. It's unfortunate we have to legislate something like this, but I guess we do, the same as we have to look at speeding in the school zones and everything like that, Mr. Chair. So I just want to thank staff for bringing this forward, and I see the Peel Regional Police have a situation where they are going after the noisy vehicles. And I think we also have an amendment to this, if I could have this up as well, and add an amendment to this report, Mr. Chair, and that would be all I'm going to do is ask for your support.
Sorry, Councillor Neal, you have an amendment you're bringing forward?
Yeah.
Okay.
There was an amendment. I thought it'd be
Hold on,
posted.
we'll just wait for the clerks to...
So, yeah, we'll vote on the amendment, and I've already spoken to the main motion. So,
Okay.
in the terms of time, Mr. Chair, I'll just ask for a recorded vote on the amendment.
On the amendment,
And,
okay, just one moment.
The main motion. Thank
Okay,
you.
just one moment while we pull up the amendment here. Hold on one moment.
Thank you.
Councillor Neal, we're having trouble locating it. Did you message it to Jennifer Lane? I'm sure you did, just confirm it.
Yeah, I believe it was,
Just check your
was
system
there.
again, sir, just to make sure. Maybe resend it. That would be the most expeditious thing to do.
yeah, I'll resend it here.
Thank you.
Okay. And you should have it right now.
Yeah, it just came in. I saw it come across her desk. Just one moment, please, members of the committee. Yep. So, Councillor Neal, I'm puzzled here about the amendment. The amendment that you're proposing here. Be it resolved that staff review options to address noises associated with the use of engine retardant brakes in heavy vehicles and report back. Is that seems like a motion that would be sort of raised on its own.
Well, you can do that, but
Do you want to try to introduce that? Do you want to introduce that and right after we finish this report? Because technically you move the recommendation. It looks like you're trying to move a replacement motion here.
no, this was an amendment, but I discussed it with staff, so I thought it would be okay. So
Yeah,
I discussed with the director and everything. So
yeah, I would prefer to accept it as a single motion
well,
on its own.
then if I just take it on at that that bottom paragraph be taken off then.
The bottom paragraph, sir. Are you looking to just add in that options to noises associated with the use of engine retardant brakes in heavy vehicles and report back?
Yes.
Okay. Can you, Ms. Lesnoff, can you take out the portion that the operative part and just leave the operative part in, please?
Yeah.
Yeah. And please remove therefore be it resolved.
Yeah, that's the part to remove.
Yeah. The amendment would be that staff review options to address noises associated with the use of engine retardant brakes in heavy vehicles. And that would be in association with the main motion that was the recommendation of staff.
Yes.
Okay. So there's an amendment. Thank you. You've asked for a recorded vote on the amendment. Are there any other members of the committee that would like to speak to the amendment?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
It's Dan. I just want to, the only concern I have, sir, is I believe this will fall under the Highway Traffic Act. We don't have authority there. That's where my concern is. So I just ask you to take that into consideration, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, that's duly noted. Members of the committee?
Yeah, some municipalities have it in place, so I don't know if the director is there or the commissioner is there. Then
Perhaps we could have perhaps we could have staff give us their impressions of this amendment as it stands in relation to what's being asked of committee under the recommendation. Commissioner Adams, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So staff have been working with Councillor Neal on this, and the way, if this is being added as recommendation number 3, we absolutely can take a look at this through the noise bylaw.
Okay. Members of the committee, any other comments on? Okay, any other members of the committee to comment on this before I call recorded vote on Councillor Neal's amendment? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, when you're ready.
To speak to it,
Oh,
Chairman
sorry.
Marks.
Sorry, go ahead, Councillor McConkey.
Thank you. I'd send in a request to the clerk. About Councillor Neal's amendment, I appreciate seeing it. No other municipalities have signage that says no J brakes. I'm not sure the actual lingo there, but if I could ask through you to the Commissioner, would this, on a city road, would we be able to request having no J brake signage?
Through the mayor to Councillor McConkey, that would be part of our communication, so yes.
Thank you. And then to the point about this actually being more of a provincial traffic act point, if I could ask, the notice of motion that was on the agenda at the start addresses that. It was talking about amendments to the Ontario Traffic Act. To make sure that we will not be told each and every time, oh, it's under the Ontario Traffic Act. When the City of Toronto, they very clearly have something in their municipal bylaw act which allows them to make further bylaws against noise. At this point, when the meeting started this morning, that report, Corp 2033, was referred to this report. So what happens to it now? Any of the recommendation in that, the now therefore staff investigate initiating a public process for council to consider making recommendations to the Premier and the Minister of Transportation to amend the Ontario Traffic Act and permit Ontario municipalities to authorize compliance with vehicle noise bylaws. Where does that go? Because I would really hope the committee actually, attach that to this amendment, because there's no reason why we can't make a bit of noise about the noise that's going on our roads.
Commissioner Adams?
Through the chair to Councillor McConkey, so we already have the authority under the Municipal Act, so what you're referencing here, we're able to do that, although our preference right now obviously is for DRPS to continue to enforce moving vehicles.
Right. Okay, so here we are. If the vehicle, pulls out of someone's driveway, all of a sudden we can't really enforce it. We have to call Durham Region Police. Because there's several that I'm aware of that are causing quite a concern on certain streets. And each and every time it's up to Durham Region Police. There's no one that could be alerted with municipal bylaw to say this resident at this home is regularly running up and down this street and making a ruckus, like a lot of noise.
Through the chair to Councillor McConkey, as the report has indicated, so DRPS is aware that noisy vehicles are a concern, and currently right now they're in the process of updating their officer training, and they've indicated that they will be proactively addressing vehicle noise through enforcement initiatives. So we don't have the ability as municipal law enforcement officers to pull vehicles over that are moving, so our ability regarding vehicle noise is within the property. And as I stated, DRPS is having a proactive approach to this because they understand that it is an issue.
Yes, I'm aware actually. I've had conversations and letters from both the Durham Region Police Inspector at Central Office in Oshawa and at East Division. And it was said to me by Inspector Haskins at the East Division that really the noise bylaws should be regional, not municipal, because I got into conversations in addition to the vehicle traffic noise, but also about the residents complaining about neighbor noise, loud parties going on when they're calling municipal bylaw, and the process is so cumbersome. So if I could move from the vehicle noise, because this noise bylaw covers all noise, right? We're talking about amendments to the noise bylaw.
Well, right now we're talking about a specific amendment to the motion being presented to the recommendation. I'm happy to come back to you, Councillor, when we're speaking about the whole motion.
Thank you very much, Chair Marks. I'll be back then.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Any other speakers to the amendment? Mayor Carter, I have your name on the list. Did you want to speak to the amendment or move forward to the vote?
I want to get a clarification, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman.
Of course.
Did I hear that municipalities have taken the step to take away the option to be able to use a safety device within their vehicles? Is that what I'm hearing?
Staff, could you clarify what Mayor Carter is listening to? Committee's indulgence, thanks, staffer.
Do you want me to be more specific, Mr. Chairman?
Maybe, Mayor Carter, yes. I think staff are trying to...
Right, to my understanding, is part of a safety process inside of these larger vehicles. So I just want to get it clear. Are we asking then that those things be removed as a safety feature in those larger vehicles? Because if they're not allowed to use them, I think it's automatic about how they kick in at a certain time. Including buses. Including our Durham Regional Transit buses. So I just want to make sure that I understand it completely, sir.
Are you speaking to the amendment where we're reviewing engine retardant brakes and heavy vehicles?
Well, I think it refers to both. There was a question that was brought up that the City of Toronto has removed it, and I was shocked when I heard that.
Oh, okay.
Through the chair to Mayor Carter, our intent is not to remove it, it's just to take a look at it, because there are some municipalities that do address it in their noise bylaws and traffic bylaws, but that's the reason why we'd like to just take a look at it further.
Okay, I just worry, Madam Commissioner, that we're going to ask people to remove a safety device inside large vehicles, including Durham Regional Transit, that safety device will be removed. That's what my concern is.
Through the chair to Mayor Carter, that is not the intent to remove it.
Thanks very much, Madam.
Thank you for that clarity, Madam Clerk. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Hirsch to the amendment.
Thank you. Basically, the mayor took the words right out of my mouth. I don't understand the automotive machinations of all of this. I don't appreciate it, but it seems to me it would be very difficult to enforce, and I don't know, unless you were next door to an active construction site or an active area that had this type of vehicle traffic going back and forth. I don't know how one could have any expectation of enforcing it. I'm just worried about how cumbersome it's all going to be, but if staff's going to look into it, so be it. But I don't think we have the authority to trump any safety issue, or we have the authority to trump the Highway Traffic Act. So I will just leave it at that and look forward to hear what staff has to say. Thank you.
Duly noted. Thank you for your comments. Any other members of the committee or visiting councillors on Councillor Neal's amendment? Hearing none. Thank you, Councillor Neal. I think you've asked for a recorded vote. Ms. Lane, when you're ready.
Councillor Neal?
Yes.
Councillor Giberson?
Yes.
Councillor Hurst?
Yes.
Councillor Nicholson?
Yes.
Mayor Carter?
Yes?
Councillor Marks?
Yes. Thank you very much. That carries. On the main motion as amended, I'm going to go all the way back to Councillor McConkey, and you can ask your questions now, Councillor McConkey.
Thank you very much, Chair Marks. So about the noise bylaw itself, I would want to ask staff if there is any way of considering having the city's noise bylaw picked up by the region of Durham for enforcement, not just with DRPS, but all our municipal bylaw, going out to these complaints and being told over and over again, you know, this list that people have to compile have to come from Durham Region Police, and people wait months, if not years, to have any action and enforcement, the way I understand it. And it is a problem for Durham Region Police as well, according to Inspector Haskins, and he said it really should be handled regionally. I don't know if I'm being clear on explaining this, but I don't think the region has a municipal bylaw, but they do certainly have a lot of residents' tax money, and they have Durham Region Police. So if they could take the calls, someone at the region, and make this a one-step process rather than a two-step, because what we have are people calling in to municipal bylaw about a noisy neighbor and having to call in multiple times and have to get records from Durham Region Police and lists of things, and it's just a very, as I've said already, cumbersome process, and I would really like to see it streamlined for faster enforcement.
Was there a question there, Councillor McConkey, or is that a comment on the main motion?
Well, no, I am asking the Commissioner, sorry, through you, if it's possible to have, in any consideration of the noise bylaw, looking and maybe reaching out to Inspector Haskin to see specifically what he's recommending, because it was a big part of our discussion a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, and just in for clarity, with relation to excessive vehicle noise, correct?
No, with excessive noise.
Well,
Not vehicle
I think
noise,
this report
not in
deals with,
particular.
I know, and I think this report deals with excessive vehicle noise, so let's focus our argument within that. So the question would be,
Okay.
could that be uploaded to the region? Commissioner Adams, when you're ready.
If that's something that committee and council would like for the region to deal with all vehicle noise, then that's their decision.
Councillor McConkey?
Well, that's encouraging, but actually this is an amendment to our noise bylaw, and it was also not specifically just vehicle noise. It's the noise bylaw that we have. If all the municipalities, I don't know how we've compared, maybe I could ask the commissioner at this point, how does our noise bylaw compare with the other regional municipalities in Durham? Are we getting more calls? Would you have any idea? Have you done any comparison in the amendment to this bylaw, looking at the other municipalities' bylaw in Durham Region, with all covered by Durham Region Police?
Through you, Chair Marks, to Councillor McConkey, I'm not 100% sure what your question is.
Okay.
So we have been working hand in hand with Durham Regional Police on this matter.
Okay.
And if you're suggesting that our entire noise bylaw be administered by the region, is that your question? Because noise, there's a whole bunch of noise. It goes from ringing of bells to vehicle noise to babies crying to people playing sports on the street. So is your intent for that all to be uploaded to the region?
Well, here's the thing. We have a region smoking bylaw, which they are supposed to be enforcing. We have other regional bylaws, and I think the idea is to have either, if it's not specifically the region, at least one bylaw shared among the municipalities, so we have kind of clear enforcement, because it just seems to be a little bit onerous for the resident complaining. And I don't know how we can streamline it, but that's what I'm looking for. And I guess at a certain point, maybe I'll just have to, petition the region and our regional councils here in Oshawa if we can't get something more cohesive. Those are my comments. That's my question.
Thank you very much. Members of the committee, visiting councillors, on the main motion as amended.
Yeah, record a vote. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, when you're ready.
Councillor Neal,
Yes.
Councillor Giberson,
Yes.
Councillor Hurst,
Yes.
Councillor Nicholson,
Yes?
Mayor Carter,
Yes.
Councillor Marks.
Yes, that motion carries. That concludes business under the public consent agenda. I now move to items to be introduced by councillors. Members of the committee, I open the floor to you.
Motion to adjourn, Councillor John Neal.
Thank you very much. I have a motion to adjourn from Councillor Neal. Are there any opposed? Hearing none, thank you very much. That concludes our meeting for today. Thank you, members of the committee.